At this time of year, most polite exchanges revolve around upcoming travel plans. More than once this week, congregants making small talk would innocently ask me, "Rabbi, what are your plans for Christmas?" And I would smile, and I would watch a wave of shock come over their faces once they realized what they had said. The truth is, I love Christmas. It's a beautiful, quiet time of year when the rabbi has no preparations or responsibilities in creating the holiday for others to enjoy. It might even be a rabbi's favorite holiday. So why do I smile when asked, "Rabbi, what are your plans for Christmas?" And why does the thoughtful and kind congregant who asks the question blush for asking it? Because from this innocent exchange is the awareness that we do not live in a Jewish world, that the calendar we keep is not only the Jewish calendar, that the language we use is not only the Jewish language, and the reference points for the rhythm of our lives are not totally Jewish. My smile and the congregant's embarrassment are two versions of the same recognition that we are both Jews living in the diaspora, outside of our own land, our own language, our own calendar. And it's important to be reminded of this from time to time, to know where we are, to know what we have chosen for ourselves. We are so blessed by this particular diaspora life in Canada in 2013, nearly 2014. Of all Jewish times and places, there is no doubt that this is among the finest of times and the finest of places to be a Jew. When just moments ago we said the prayer for our country, we spoke those words wholeheartedly and without any fear, as if we were speaking from within the country, and we are, and we do. And we like it out here in the diaspora, just as Joseph did. The Joseph story of Genesis has been read by most Jews throughout most of the ages as complete and total fantasy. A Jew on the throne of the most powerful country? Impossible. When the scroll of Esther tells of a similar success, it's taken as fodder for Purim's festival of jokes and costumes, carnivals and spiels, when everything is absurd and silly and topsy-turvy, because who would dare to imagine a Jew living in the diaspora not only feeling safe and sound, not only at home, but rising to positions of power? But Joseph's story is our story, not only today, but in other moments of highlights throughout Jewish history, and thank God there have been many. Daniel in late biblical period, the golden age of Spain, in living memory in Iraq, with heads of state and with Jewish Supreme Court justices and professors in the academies. We remember those highlights of our history, we celebrate them, we praise those days. And we look back at the Joseph story and recall that when he was blessed with professional opportunity, when he spoke the Egyptian language fluently and without a hint of accent, when he dressed like Egyptian royalty, he was also doing his best out there in the diaspora to raise his kids with what we would call today Jewish identity. And it wasn't easy for him then, and it isn't easy for us today. Hanson's law of sociology: the son wants to forget what the grandson wants to remember. Joseph had 2 sons. He names them Ephraim and Menasha. Menasha literally means he who causes to forget. When Menasha is born, Joseph finds comfort in forgetting how he had struggled back home with his brothers in Israel. And so he names his firstborn child something like, "Don't remind me." Menasha, don't remind me. Ephraim, his second-born, means fertile land. Joseph declares, "God has made me fertile in the land of my affliction." After 13 years in an Egyptian prison cell, he rises up to high places in Pharaoh's palace. And so he names his second-born child something like the good life. Ephraim, the good life. And when grandfather Jacob comes from the old country to be reunited with his long-lost favorite son Joseph, he meets his grandchildren for the first time. And he literally does not recognize them. "Mi ele," he says. "Who are these?" They must have looked so thoroughly Egyptian in his eyes. They were born in Egypt to an Egyptian woman. They have Egyptian names, and they have no memory of life in Israel. There are no Jewish friends in the neighborhood of Pharaoh's palace. Jacob must have been shaken up when he sees these young Egyptian princes who do not even understand the language that he speaks. So what does he do? Jacob adopts them. The rabbinic midrash could be written today. It rings so true for us today. Our sages of centuries past imagined that Jacob says to Joseph, "My son, you think because these boys were born in Egypt to an Egyptian mother that I would not take them in? But you are wrong. This is not so. Because they were born in Egypt, because they are so thoroughly Egyptian, I will draw them even closer to me, and I will give them all that I can to raise them as my own, for they are mine." And Jacob places his hands on the heads of Ephraim and Menasha, and he blesses them with his innermost blessing. He says, "By you shall the people Israel give their blessings. Through you will the future generations come to receive their blessings." And lo and behold, it works. Ephraim and Menasha go on to be strong tribes of Israel. Centuries later, Moses will bless these 2 tribes, calling them the myriads of Ephraim, the thousands of Menasha. And from the Middle Ages to today, Jewish parents bless their children each week at the Shabbat table with these very words of our parasha. We place our hands on the heads of our children and we say, "May God make you not like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." No. These children who live in the diaspora deserve a unique blessing of ancestors who were born and raised in the diaspora, because it takes a certain kind of strength, a unique kind of perseverance to cling to one's heritage when we are living outside of the land of Israel. And so we say, may you be like Fryman Menasha. Throughout ancient Israelite history, Ephraim was the northern kingdom of Israel, always susceptible to the foreign influences coming in from the north. Paganism and secularism would permeate through the northern borders, and Ephraim was easily distracted from the one God of Israel. No one knows exactly how this ritual of blessing our children at the Shabbat table came to be. Historians can trace it at least as far back to Jewish life in medieval Spain and Ashkenaz. It seems to be a custom that developed only in the diaspora. The words Yisimech Elohim ke'Ephraim u'Menashe, May God make you, as a Fryman Menasha, are a parent's way of blessing diaspora children with knowing where they come from and chaining themselves to their ancestors. As if to say, may God help you to be a Jew, despite the allure of a non-Jewish world which surrounds you. Know where you come from and know to whom you belong. Every other Friday evening here at Holy Blossom Temple, we have a sweet service called Tot Shabbat. Kids who are 6 years and younger come with parents and grandparents, and we sing a few warm Shabbat songs, and we hear a joyful Shabbat story, and we offer just a few prayers, less than a handful really. But we make sure to include the parents' blessing for their children. And we guide the parents who might not know this ritual, who might not be comfortable with these words in their mouths. We teach the parents and grandparents how to be the Kohanim of their families, how to invoke God's blessing. And they don't seem uneasy playing this role. In fact, they take to it quite quickly, and they are grateful for the instruction. First, they get very close to their little ones. Place your hands on their heads or their shoulders, we say, and they do. And then speak these ancient words of blessing, asking for God's protection, asking for God's strength, for the strength of the generations past to descend upon this child. And they do. And at Holy Blossom Temple, we have a similar ritual for every stage of life. At consecration, you remember, when parents present their children with that little gift of a precious paper Torah before the open ark, they offer these words of blessing. And we do this at bar mitzvah time when parents wrap their children up in the talit for the first time. And we do this again at confirmation, when our teenagers are just finding their distance, their independence from their parents. We say, this is a moment for drawing close. This is a moment for drawing near to one another, being in close proximity to one another to receive a parent's blessing. And we do this again at wedding time, when before marching to the chuppah, after the signing of the ketubah, parents draw close and offer their innermost prayers for their child's future. This is what we do at every stage of life. We mark the passage of time, we sanctify it by drawing nearer to one another and by offering private words of blessing. And yes, we also do this when death approaches too. But then it is the child who draws near to the parent. At the bedside, if given the chance, children hold the hand of a parent, gently brushes the mother's hair or shaves the father's face, and offers private words of gratitude and blessing, praying for God's grace in bringing a peaceful conclusion to this life. It was the night of the Exodus from Egypt, and the Israelites were ready to go. Bags were packed, freedom was calling, and then Moses suddenly realizes that they almost forgot. They had made an oath to Joseph more than 400 years earlier, and they had almost forgotten to take the bones of Joseph with them. We heard the words just moments ago. Joseph adjured Israel's children, saying to them, God will surely take care of you, and when God does, bring my bones up from this place. Joseph died aged 110 years. They embalmed him in the Egyptian style, and he was put into a coffin there in Egypt. After 400 years of slavery, no one seemed to remember where those bones were buried. One midrash imagines that Moses was searching high and low throughout Egypt all that night. And just as at the moment when he was ready to give up, he encounters one of the most mysterious and enchanting characters of Jewish folklore. Her name is Serach. She was the daughter of Asher, and she lived to be 400 plus years old. It was Joseph's niece who was still alive and well. Miracle of miracles, how could it be so? She comes out to greet Moses and she says, I know where he's buried. I remember. And she led Moses to the banks of the Nile. There, she said, right in the middle of the Nile, that's where Joseph is. You see, they attached weights to his coffin and they sank him deep into the Nile. Why would they do that? Moses asked. To sweeten the water, Serach replied. Joseph brought such blessings to Egypt. The Egyptians believed that his essence would flow as the lifeblood of this land. And so Moses walked to the edge of the river, and his own memories flood over him, memories of when he was just a baby sent in a basket to float down that very river Nile. But now it was time to go. And so he calls out, Joseph, Joseph, I've come to make good on your brother's promise. We have not forgotten you. The time has come. It is now or never. It is time to go home to Eretz Yisrael. And with those words, so the story goes, the casket of Joseph rises to the surface of the Nile. And Moses lifts it from the waters, and he carries it on his own back. And some say Moses carried the bones of Joseph all by himself throughout the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And whenever they met people, other foreign peoples, there in the wilderness, whenever they would ask him, what are those 2 boxes that you carry with you? The answer would come, in one of these boxes, we find the tablets of the law, the 10 Commandments. And in the other box, we keep the bones of the man who fulfilled every mitzvah, every commandment inscribed in the tablets of the first box. Every generation walks this world carrying 2 boxes, the mitzvot and the bones of our ancestors. Are these heavy burdens we wish to unload? Will we forget them and leave them behind? Is this what we call Jewish baggage? Or is it an honor that we carry with pride? Do these sweeten and enrich the lives we live? Could it be that we do not carry them, but rather they carry us as we make our way through this life's journey? The Reform movement was founded more than 200 years ago with a firm belief that, yes, we can make a lasting home in the diaspora. And since then, we have learned, too, that Israel will always be the center of the Jewish world. And we have committed ourselves to establish strong Jewish homes, to reestablish strong Jewish schools, to rebuild and restore and reconsecrate strong synagogues. And we say these words to one another at least 5 times a year. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and let us strengthen one another. Amen.